Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the DXM podcast. I am your host, Colborn Bell. We are joined today by data scientist, artist, and developer, Shane Left. Welcome.
Hi, Colborn. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's exciting to have you today. Always kind of look for, people who care and people who are passionate. And your knowledge of the history, the things that you've been doing, it caught our eye.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun. NFT space still has a lot of areas to explore, and looking at the past of it as well is very interesting to kind of draw inspiration for the future as well.
So would love for you, in your own words, to explain to the audience a bit perhaps about yourself and what brings you here today, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Chain Left, this is my pseudo-anonymous name in NFT space. If you are somehow viewing the video form of this, you probably won't see my face. I usually tend to be pseudo-anonymous. I live in Central Europe, although I'm not originally from here. I've immigrated quite a few times, and maybe not even in the best terms from my original country. I'm a data scientist by trade, so that's what I do in my daily job, although I do this less and less since I guess my career has progressed a little bit as that happens. I used to build, like machine learning algorithms in fintech space that focused on alternative credit scoring for people who without the banking history. Now I'm more focused on predictive models in digital commerce. But yeah, from an I guess crypto side, I've been in crypto since 2017, but got into NFTs really in the first half of 2021. And I already started making art in 2000, like NFT art, let's say, or blockchain art in 2021, but haven't pushed anything to mainnet until 2022. I actually don't have a very long art career, I guess, if we can call it that way. I've done some street art and photography in the past, but mostly as a hobby. I guess you could say I did get a glimpse of playing with digital art when because data and data visualization and stuff like that, these are very much parameterizing your outputs with the visual outputs with data. These are pretty familiar for, I think, any data scientist. So I guess I did get a glimpse there, but I really started doing digital art in 2021 and 2022. And my main interest has been mostly medium native art, so the kind of art that you can only do with blockchains. And I mean this not just technically, but also conceptually, right? So I usually get very interested in concepts like permanence, ownership, dynamism, coordination, and of course, as my I guess pseudo-anonymous name would state, collectivism as well. So those are kind of my main interest areas in this space, and these are the kinds of works that I've been doing myself, and also collecting myself as well.
So let's run it linearly. I'd love to know kind of just first what excited you about crypto in 2017.
Yeah, so I've obviously heard about crypto before, but for me, just maybe looking at maybe it's even not very smart to do it that way, but I usually looked at the type of people who told me about crypto at the time, like in 2013 and then 2012 and so on. And at the time, I didn't get too much interested in it. I think I got really interested in crypto in 2017 because of smart contracts, really. I think it is the case for a lot of artists, I think, in this space. Artists tend to have a bit more interest in these programmable functions of the blockchain. I think smart contracts, the ability to build kind of communities around a contract, essentially, in a permissionless way, that's pretty interesting, I think, for a lot of people. Some of the use cases that were mentioned at the time, like DAOs and so on, these were pretty interesting, I think, for me at the time. I think this is how I got really interested in crypto at the time.
Look, I'm right there with you. I think the allure of the smart contracts, that ability to kind of like organize and program information and value on the internet was so novel that it just like could not be missed. How about let's bring it then to NFTs. What got you interested there?
Well, when looking at my past, I had I didn't really study art. I did take optional, like just by my own choice, art courses in the past, and I did play with these different, I guess, mediums like street art and so on. So I already had interest in that. So when I saw NFTs, I guess it immediately struck out as finally a way for artists actually to kind of gain some uh, acceptance and sort of I guess value out of their work. So that was very big for me, like in NFT space. I've never really bought any PFPs or anything like that since I've joined. Maybe one or two if I liked the artwork itself, but never really got into that type of that side of NFTs. Mostly have been interested in the art side of it. And yeah, I've been I think enjoying mostly that part of it. And of course, what I liked the most, or what got me into NFTs, which is this side of artists getting recognition, maybe isn't even the same as what I like about NFTs now. Because right now, I very much really like the. I mean, of course, I love that artists are getting recognition, but I now like the new concepts that are being brought to life with NFTs itself. That's what I really enjoy a lot these days.
Maybe, now would be a good time to kind of talk about some of those new concepts or some of those artists that have been inspiring for you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I guess like one, and this is not unique to me. I think like you will hear it from a lot of artists, but I think the concept of ownership, right? That's kind of starts off as a very interesting topic of conversation. I think what is the art, what is the token, and so on. I'm sure you had these conversations before. I know you had these conversations before. I've listened to your podcast. Yeah, so yeah, this is like a very interesting topic of obviously. And it's interesting already in the traditional art world, actually, right? You have a piece of paper saying that, or deed that tells you that you own the artwork. But in I think crypto, it becomes even more, I guess, highlighted because there's so much together, the metadata and the art itself versus the token. Like I guess an obvious and very clear example, Ria Myers, right? Like she did that a lot. Millie Werner did it a lot in 2014. Not that I knew those things when they were doing it. I've discovered this in 2021, really. But it is really inspiring to see those artists early on challenging these concepts at the time. So that's definitely one that I really am interested in. What are your thoughts on that, actually?
Well, like I have always told people, one, you don't own the art, you own the token. And I believe that when I prescribe to the idea that like Web3 is reorganizing kind of the social fabric of how we relate to one another and how we kind of engage in economies of ownership. So I kind of believe that once the art is distributed in this format, that really the art is for everybody. And there is just as legitimate a use case to somebody that right clicks, saves it, and has it and shares it and spreads it. That can be deemed ownership, but there is really only one token. And I think that token is a signifier of like the act of creation. And it is, kind of, it's something else other than the art, right? It's a symbolic act of ownership, both the artist taking ownership over like the idea, the concept, and that act of creation, and so much of like the intent behind it is what I believe the art to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's funny. Like, I think a lot of people got this eureka moment, or maybe almost like enlightenment with the qualia about the ownership that comes with the ownership, right? Like that is an additional qualia on top of actually experiencing and enjoying the art. And I think like there is of course there are still a lot of people who don't really understand that maybe, but I think that's really interesting, like how and I myself, even though I knew about this, like actually experiencing with NFTs, like the ownership of something, like some artist that you really like ownership of an artwork that came from an artist that you really like, that that ownership of that token, at least, that is really that's an additional quality, definitely, on top of the actual experience you get with the art. So
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting to me that art in this medium really gets set free, you know, because so much of the art, physical art that exists that is, you know, considered to be valuable is generally held in free ports, or it could be held in museum vaults, or it's held in private residences, and it's really held in places that nobody ever gets to see it or experience it. You know, and I loved the early metaverse days, whether it was Crypto Voxels or Somnium Space, when we were kind of around and you would see art that you might have owned in somebody else's gallery just as an image. And, you know, for them to care so much to display it and showcase it. And, you know, that was, that's, for me, that's very cool. I'm very much of this idea that like everything should be CCO, everything should be shared. If you feel a connection to it, then share it. You don't need to own it. I kind of like that commonality that this medium invited.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I mean, I personally would think that way as well. But I also understand like it maybe not all artists are there yet, like in terms of that idea of, you know, CC0 and so on. But I fully agree with you. I think I mentioned earlier, right? Like the street art, for example, is very interesting in that medium because you make the art on this very durable bricks and stones, and you know, but also there is a very high chance that it will not be permanent. It's very transitory because, you know, it will get cleaned up and so on. So there is this like always this concept of almost being temporary, right, in street art. While on the other hand, on the other side of it, like on the completely opposite spectrum, you have digital art and the whole, you know, NFT space itself, especially, but also even our daily lives, right? Attention span is very low, and you know, people's attention can move away. And in the NFT space, I think that's like almost hyper, like even more. So I think that concept of permanence is very interesting for me as well. Like you know, if you can actually prove the permanence of something that will always exist, that's why I got into this you know, sort of this on-chain art a lot as well, on-chain art movements, like kind of trying to, you know, reach as much permanence as we can, and sort of. There are other reasons behind this, by the way, but you know, like behind my on-chain, I guess, journey. But yeah, like that concept is very interesting.
You know, I was having this conversation today with the, you know, other co-founder director of the museum, Shivani, about this very thing. I think it's few and far between the people that have the interest in actually going backwards. We live in such like a FOMO-driven society that everybody is always looking, reaching, searching for kind of that new and next thing. And frankly, I find it to be incredibly exhausting. But, you know, maybe what compels you to like look backwards and care about what came before?
Oh yeah, like I mean, this I guess you're talking about this historical sort of moment of NFTs, or is that?
Yeah. Just your general interest. I find it rare, you know, and the people that do it are incredibly passionate. And, you know, for the first time, it's also easier because everything is, you know, there and recorded on chain.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I guess it's easier, definitely, than, you know, chasing the trend of the day or meta of the week that we always have in this NFT space. So that's for sure. For me, yeah, I also agree with you that it's definitely less exhausting. It's definitely easier to look back and say, okay, these are the things that existed in the past, and those are the things that we can collect. I do find that in the last 1 year or so, I do think that it's become a little harder from the perspective of because there are a lot of debates in the historical NFT space regarding like how to track the provenance, how to maybe assign sort of value to things and so on. So there are difficulties there as well, but I do find this a little more at least philosophical and interesting at least than trying to understand why the meta of today is, I don't know, or last week is checks, and what is the meta of this week is, I don't know, something else. It's very much at least more in my zone of interest.
Yeah.
My interest really came from that, of course. One, like you said, this being more, I guess, clearer. But then also just the fact that looking at the history and understanding these early, these people who were early to explore these really interesting areas of NFT space is also a little inspiring, right? Like you can actually, reflect that on your own work today. Like when you see what they have done, it's kind of starts to make sense. And then, okay, they had done these things that were with the tools that was available to them at the time. And now what else can I do with more tools that I have today? So yeah, that's kind of another reason that I think is very interesting to look at the historical NFT space.
And you have a specific interest in on-chain.
Yeah. That's because of the permanence element, of course. But there is a lot actually related to my on-chain interest because, I'll nerd it out a little bit now. Just kind of, I hope like it won't get too boring. But for me, like that's one, right? Like the permanence element is obviously like one element that I talked about, like kind of almost like a challenge towards the low attention span, and kind of having something always there, permanent. And there's of course the practical side of the permanence, right? Like the servers, if they go down, this on-chain art is still there, and so on. But then there are also the other elements of that on-chain art that really appeals to me. Like one is this is a financial medium, right? This is mostly, at least, it's invented as a financial medium. And in that medium, I would say now, today, 90%, maybe more, of the purchases are happening through speculation, whether that's fungible or non-fungible. Like it is happening through speculation. And seeing, it's almost like when you use this financial medium for storing art, it's almost a bit like almost like sticking to the man, I guess. Like it's a bit like sticking it to the man. Like it's almost like, oh, like you're doing speculation here, but I'm gonna store something that will be there to make this blockchain look more beautiful than it is. It's almost a bit like challenging that speculation side of the medium, at least for me. So that's definitely another area that's appealing to me. I mean, when you see this, what happened with recently with inscriptions, ordinals, and how there was a reaction from some of the like Bitcoin users, as they call maximalists. Like there was a lot of reaction of using that for art purposes or storing images there. And for me, like that's almost like the kind of one of the main appeals of that that tool for me. Like that you can use it actually for art. That's great. Like you can actually almost annoying, almost that annoying part is actually the appealing part for me, at least. That's another thing that I like about on-chain.
Yeah, the idea of trolling is kind of a hallmark of crypto.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, there is the other side of it, right? Like, on Ethereum at least, and I think even that applies to even inscriptions and generally storing data in Bitcoin and anywhere else, really. It's a little expensive, right, to store art on the chain. And for me, optimization itself is a journey of art itself, because why did people store these little ships in the bottles, or why did people do these miniatures in the past? That's kind of similar, I think, is the way I see it. Like most of the one-of-one art that I've done, I've really like, I would say 80% of my work was focused on optimization of it. Like 20% was the actual aesthetic, and the other 80% was maintaining that aesthetic without like by reducing the size of that file essentially. So that process itself for me is very artistic, and I've seen this in a few other artists as well, like Peter Plasma. I might have mispronounced his name, but the one behind Sculptor, for example. So there is that aspect that I've seen with some other artists as well. I think that element is also very interesting to me, like this optimization process. That's another reason why I'm interested in on-chain art.
Just because the rules are so clear, and then to optimize within those bounds.
Sort of, yeah. And then of course maintaining an appealing aesthetic as well within that, while still optimizing. That's I think the goal.
Do you want to talk about your practice and the work that you've created?
Yeah, sure. So I've done a couple of things. The first, I guess, collection. So I'm actually in 2021. I've done some even Gen Art contract, but I didn't actually deploy it on mainnet. And the sole reason behind that was really I didn't want to do something that first may not sell out, but second, even if it does sell out, there would be this large base of collectors who would have bought something from me, and I don't know, it felt almost at the time that there was a lot of expectation from people who launched collections at the time, who launched collections, and I didn't want that really. So that's why I started with one-of-ones really in 2022, and I've done this collection called Art Ponzi. With capital letters. It's a little bit of kind of poking fun in the Ponzi schemes. It does have sort of an airdrop mechanism, but it hard stops at 10th piece, and that's kind of the message I wanted to give, because the way I understood, at least in crypto space, is that the Ponzi schemes, like the actual Ponzi scheme that you would see, they mostly work when you keep it vague. Right, like you're a Yuga Labs and you release a collection. You don't say like, "Oh, this is the last collection." You just keep releasing a new one, dropping a new one, and that works. Like people buy into that speculation a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't like that side of crypto a lot, and that's why I wanted to do it this way. I said like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do this, one piece, and then the owner of that piece will get airdropped another piece in the next round. And the owner of the second one will get airdropped the third piece, and so on, and only until the 10th piece, and then we're over. That's kind of the logic I did. And in Art Ponzi, all the pieces are 100% on chain. And what I did, I guess, I tried to do things a little bit. Also, I tried to do the things that didn't exist much. At least I don't know if they exist. Maybe they do. But I'm very into glitch art, so I tried to do like this on-chain glitch art. So animation at the time wasn't that common in on-chain collections, so I kind of did that. I did on-chain music, like kind of audio or music. I did some on-chain puzzles. Like every piece had some sort of something interesting, I think, about them. Some pieces were, for example, animated, but not like a loop animation, but sort of a story animation. So you have a beginning and a middle and an end, almost like a mini movie. But it was 100% on chain. So this is something you can't achieve with something like GIF file, right? Like in GIF, you have a loop. So it was kind of like that was at least for me, that was the interest. And also throughout that process, I already had some, but I improved my SVG skills, like SVG file format, I guess. That was, I think, like really fun. Doing Art Ponzi was really fun. And we finished the 10th piece, I think, in January or so. I've done another collection in December, actually, that I haven't launched or announced yet. It's actually minted, but I'm not announcing because it's like I'm waiting for let's say, the right time. It's a bit conceptual, that one.
Cool.
And then I've done a generative small collection called ITTN, I Trust the Noise on Inscriptions. That was an audiovisual one, and I kind of tried to catch being the first to do that. I still think I am, but I'm not sure. Like I haven't seen still, and I asked a lot of people, but I hope that it's still the first. So it was like audio visual. So you have both visual and audio stuff together.
We do know, like, yeah, that being and claiming being first to anything is always a tricky endeavor.
Yeah. So, especially because having been into historical NFT space in the past a lot, it like we've always seen another first coming up and so on. So I'm trying to be a bit more humble there.
Right.
So, yeah. And then and now I'm working on another generative collection on Ethereum actually.
Cool.
That one is going to be also, I think, fun because it's also going to have some different mechanics like that hopefully didn't exist before. So yeah, that's kind of my, I guess, sort of journey with art.
Yeah, I love it. I'm curious because you are so well researched. Presumably, do you consider kind of a lot of these early, experimental works to be undervalued?
Some are definitely, I think, but valuation is so tricky. It's like price-wise, probably, I guess they are undervalued. Attention-wise, I think definitely undervalued. Like, when I look at some of these works and how much like they thought about actually, or how much thought they put into it, or at least how much creativity they put into it. That's that to me, like, it's super interesting. Like I can't, I can talk about all day about, Nile coins, or I can talk about all day about, I don't know, like pinnacles or stuff like that. Like I can talk about those a lot, but from a price valuation perspective, I don't know, honestly. Like it's very tricky.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it correct. From an attention point of view, and obviously, I struggle with this as well in kind of running, the museum of like, how do we begin to like sort, classify, catalog, or even begin to like bring in certain assets into the museum in a, kind of safe way, as far as just like archival. What does it mean to, maintain, something for Namecoin or even for Bitcoin or counterparty addresses? That is its own struggle. And, I find that even, again, I was talking about this with Giovanni today, that our attention tends to very much be forward, always kind of looking to what is next or what people are doing, when that's really not kind of the traditional role of the museum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially like when you're, especially if you're running a museum, I bet this must be hard to kind of decide, the direction that you want to take and.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately for historical things, I've always leaned into what I would consider people who are more expert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also a little bit of historical NFT spaces, maybe like the people in that space in general, and that includes me as well. It's a bit of the fault of us as well, maybe. Like, there was a lot of I guess even debates turned into maybe even personal a little bit and so on. People have their financial interests in mind when they're having those debates, so things don't go always the way that you would expect to go or you would want to go. Right. So that might have also put some people off as well. And in general, the historical NFT space is less. You can't make money just like that, right? Like, I'm sure there are, like, you can make money probably, but you can't make money like in 1 week as you would do with flipping a PFP project or something.
Right.
And if NFT space overall attracted the kind of people that are interested in 1 week returns mostly, then maybe that's also why the attention is not much there.
And, maybe that was hard for me too, because I did see numerous times where people who, called themselves NFT archaeologists or NFT historians, found a project, accumulated a bag and then just nonstop shilled it, right? So when I saw, how closely their interests were in just kind of the financial gain, and it's hard for me to like even begin to validate that from the position that I'm in, especially in so I always kind of look for instead of any one person, what are the active communities, who are the people that care, who are the people that are still showing up to various events.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I even like I will be very blunt. Like I myself am not. I have never like accumulated and shit, but I've myself of guilty of calling myself, for example, at some point also NFT historian. But when you think about it, and I've done it. Yes, I've written a lot about NFT history. I have a lot of articles, but it's a bit weird to call yourself an NFT historian when it's like I don't know how long is this space is like really popular 2 years for 2 years. So that's why I changed my I just said NFT history writer. Okay, that's probably a bit more realistic and humble than calling yourself NFT historian. But yeah, I mean I totally get you. And it's not even just that. Like it's not even just accumulating and shilling, but also even after the fact, like you reasonably or expectedly, you also have fights about when someone finds something new, right? What happens to the people who actually accumulated something after that, like in terms of a timestamp? So what happens then? There will be challenges, and it happens like oh, this is not art, or oh, this is not really supposed to be that way, or like this is on a blockchain that I don't care about, like stuff like that. There will be a lot of also controversies there, which is again, I mean, it's expected, but also it can tell you a little bit about the space in general, that it can become problematic. But in the long term, I don't see this becoming really meaningful. Like in the long term, I do think that there will be, at least on an average basis, more attention on those early pioneers than last month's meta, let's say.
Yeah, I agree with. So, I mean, all to say, you would consider this to be more than just a fad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I agree with you. There is something fundamental about like the shift in, and I think the word is one that you used earlier, ownership, the idea of digital ownership, the idea of like shifting consumption into digital places. Are you interested at all in like the building of digital worlds, of metaverses? Does this excite you?
I mean, I do have a lot of interest in this side of, and again, this is something that because only you can do with blockchain, this interoperability, and sort of this coordination side of blockchains. That's definitely interesting for me. That is maybe from a I don't know if we can call that metaverse. I mean, what is metaverse? Even this is a metaverse, maybe, like, or Twitter is a metaverse. But from the perspective of metaverse, of gaming, and so on, that's not too much my interest. But I do see a lot of fun, interesting, I guess, metaverse-alike mechanics between human coordination through blockchain and interoperable contracts, when you can actually compose things on top of each other. Those are, like, to me, I'm actually hoping and expecting 2023 will be very interesting from that perspective. Like, I'm following a few developments that have been happening in the last, I would say, 6 months or so, and like some of those, like, really, really interesting things are happening, and it's all art, to be honest. Like, and it's always what happens. Like, art is always like the driving force, and then maybe more like other, like, gaming use cases and so on also get adopted. But the starting point always becomes art, and then that's what's happening, and I'm seeing it already happening. So I'm very excited about that part. Like, I can talk more about this, by the way. Like, I just didn't want to, like, distract too much, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm super interested in that, and I'm super interested. I don't think we've really touched on kind of, you know, where like the technology perhaps is enabling maybe what you would call like the left of chain left.
Yeah. Yeah, both. So which one do you want to go first with?
Oh, that's up to you. Yeah.
All right. So let's start with the interoperability. I'll start with a collection. And I can probably call him friend now, Remnant, who's an artist who's done some work in the past. Like he's done two collections, it's the ones that I know at least. One is called Vibes, and the other one is called Reliquary. And in Reliquary, the smart contract itself, like if you read it, it's like a story, like it's a literature, like art, like itself. Just reading it, like human readable side of it, is very interesting already. But within that contract, what he does is that every token or every artwork gets attached a point or a value called mana, and it gets accumulated in that token essentially. And once it reaches a certain level, like I think 150, you can upgrade the art and make it more glitchy. These are all happening on chain, by the way. And the thing is, if you actually collect something from the previous collection, like Vibe, and burn it, you automatically get also 100 mana points. So it's like this, already you have some interaction between the first and the second. Also, the ownership of the first one allows you to program your own art into his aesthetic. So let's say you're like there is some sort of like a pixel glitch aesthetic already on the artwork, and if I upload there, for example, another pixel art of my own, it will be there, but within that aesthetic of the actual piece. So there is this like a coordination between the artist and the collector themselves. And it's like really, really interesting stuff for me. This is like just a starting point, right? And then now another developer called 0x the Dude, he released a new Solidity like a contract essentially called Scripty, and that allows you to actually compose art on top of each other. So you create an art collection, and someone else can use the palettes from that collection to create another one, and then but easily. This was always possible, but with that Scripty, essentially now it's super easy, and like you can, I don't know, like the second collection can, like a third collection can bring the maybe shapes or something from the second one and build another artwork. So you kind of start to build this metaverse like thing, I guess, or arts universe sort of. So this is what I'm talking about when I say this is the kind of metaverse that I'm interested in. But it's totally possible for gaming to use that contract as well. Of course, like it's totally possible for gaming to utilize this as well. So this is the kind of thing that I'm really, really interested in, and I think that it will become bigger and bigger because this is the kind of thing that is more unique to blockchains, and that's not really possible in any other way in this scale. So yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm really interested in that's happening in the space recently.
Super cool. Yeah, I'll check those out.
Yeah, sorry, I nerd a bit here, but yeah. And the left side of it, yeah, I do think there is a lot of this coordination element again can actually help a lot with the left side of the, I guess, in the crypto space. There aren't many of us, by the way, but we've been speaking with blockchain socialists a lot about this. There's definitely some element of it. We are aware of there will be some contrast, right? Like the space is filled with speculation, and then we're aware of it. And of course, I think there is a part of it that is possible to do with less hype. That it is possible to, I think, form communities without actually, falling into this hype mechanics. I think that soulbound tokens are pretty good for that, for forming communities that are around a specific, I guess, idea, right? And particularly the collective ownership side is very interesting for me because it's not even just DAOs. Yes, like DAO obviously is interesting, like for any leftist, I think, in the space. Like you can much better coordinate with crypto than at least globally than anywhere else. I still believe that, but also from a collective ownership perspective, like you can imagine this is something I think you talked about with one of your guests. Even I don't remember who, might be Sterling Crispin. That's sort of, you can have an almost like an art house, right, where you have the ownership by the artists, and every piece gets a percentage share, goes into the art house treasury, for example, and that can be actually used to bring up new artists, up and coming artists. So there is a lot of, I think, value to explore in that area. If I actually ever, if I ever really, be financially secure enough that I can quit my job and focus only on crypto, I think this is the kind of thing that I want to explore the most. Like this sort of bringing a collective ownership for artists who are, trying to essentially bring their art to the world. So these are the kind of things that I find value for a leftist in crypto space.
I think there would be a lot of artist collectives interested in pursuing that, but they just don't have or the means or the know-how to begin to set that up. Go ahead.
Yeah, the tooling hasn't been. I mean, it is 100% possible. Like it's absolutely possible to do this. It's just like you said, it's not very easy to do right now. But there will be a time when these things will be very easy to do it with a few clicks and securely and safely and really like I guess sensibly, and then I hope at least it will take off.
Yeah, I've been monitoring closely what Nouns is doing as far as just the systems that they use to implement and fund and allocate towards their DAO. That is certainly interesting. I've always called the museum kind of a DAO in transition because I don't personally think the tooling is really there to enable the type of decentralization that we want, although it's a major goal for me this year to continue to push like the decision making into the community of what we explore and what goes in and what we showcase and what we talk about, because I think this is really kind of just like the most interesting and fundamental part of this movement is just returning all of like the power to the people that actually care.
How do you see the museum in an ideal decentralized model? Like what is the ultimate, I guess?
Well, I would say, first is going to empower the artists that are in our Genesis collection, right? So really have the artists be the largest stakeholders in the decision-making and the direction of it. One, because most of them were, there to know the history. And, from there, interested people who want to kind of participate can acquire the token. But, we've done various airdrops. I think we did an airdrop to all of the OpenSea users prior to December of 2020. And we're queuing up an airdrop of the Mocha token to all of the artists who are in the Genesis collection. But before we do that, I want to round it out a little bit more. So kind of doing a solicitation for donations and then using, a tool like Snapshot for them to begin to decide and dictate programming. And also, finding ways to empower and encourage people to begin to show off the art in their collection and to care about it and to go back and talk about, why they bought this art and what this artist meant to them and how does, architecture and, 3D models in general become as valued as, the JPEG has. Because I think there's a dislocation of value that still exists there.
Yeah. How do you do you plan to use Mocha token for the governance or
for everything? Yeah, Mocha. I think I see everything that we did in order as additive, and I think we're pretty close to the full tech stack that I envision us creating. Now it's just about driving more users into it, having more stories told, having more art being shown and showcased, and again, trying to turn people off of this, like, what's next, and really revisit like the building blocks and the artists that were fundamental in shaping and building this this ecosystem.
It's always interesting, isn't it? Like with governance. I mean, I'm in a DAO and almost like I guess starting one of the founding members of the DAO in like Punicodes, but I always found it difficult to find a way to, how do you align the financial side of a token with the governance when, in the end of the day, do we want to basically really listen to the person who paid the most, essentially, or is it more about some sort of selection process? So there's like always that kind of interesting conversations about governance and the tokens.
I think releasing as much as possible to ideally the people who you think would have the highest vested interest in keeping and telling that story. And from there, it's like arts, right? You can give it away to the people that you think are the best stewards, but eventually they may or they may not sell it. And that's just kind of the nature of these markets.
Yeah, totally.
We're at time, so would love for you to let people know any last words that you might have and certainly where to find you.
Yeah, sure. So I'm, I guess the thing that I wanted to tell people is really, I hope you will continue, like whoever is listening to this probably is interested in a little bit of that art side of the NFT space. And I hope you're kind of continuing the developments in that space. You can find me on Twitter as a Chain Leftist handle, or you can look at my website, chainleft.art. That website is actually not fully finished. It's just sort of like the last collection that I made is there now only, but I'll hopefully at some point update that to have reflective of everything I've done. And also, I'm hoping to release a new collection in April. I'm kind of pretty far ahead actually in terms of the actual generative side of it and the contract, but there are things that I want to add to it that is a little bit, I guess, different. So I want to hopefully finish that. Yeah, and
Awesome.
And I would love people to look at it.
Well, I'm super grateful for the time. I guess we'll say goodbye here. I'm Colborn Bell. Super big thank you and a lot of gratitude to DMINTI for putting us together. And we were joined today by Chain Left.
Thanks, Colborn. Thanks, DMINTI. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Breaking news.